Hello everyone, in this video we will discuss the strategy to attempt UPSC Prelims paper. As UPSC Prelims is approaching, we need to devise a strategy beforehand in order to attempt the paper effectively. Now we all know that we have to attempt 100 questions within 2 hours. This 2-hour slot has to be divided into 2 parts. In one part you have to attempt the paper, and for second part you have to devote it to filling bubbles in your OMR sheet. For that you can devote 10 to 15 minutes, or say maximum 15 minutes. You have to practice filling OMR sheets so that you develop the required speed and you avoid and you minimize your silly mistakes like filling wrong bubbles in the answers. Now, before discussing the strategy to attempt the paper, we will discuss about certain symbols that you have to use, or you can devise your own symbols as well, which will help you in attempting your paper. Say a double tick you have to put on a question for which you are 100% sure that you know the answer to it. Second is a cross mark. These are the questions which you will not be attempting in your question paper. Let's say there are 1, 2 or maximum 5 questions which you do not know the answer, and you will not be taking risk to attempt those questions because you simply have no information about those questions. Third would be a symbol T to indicate that the question you are attempting, you are not 100% sure of its answer, but you will still be attempting it, taking it as a risk to increase your chances to clear the cutoff. And fourth would be a circle, indicating that you are confused between say 2 options, or you will be revisiting the particular question in your second or third iteration. Apart from these, you have to underline certain keywords or put a circle or box certain keywords in order to make a mental mark with to emphasize, to concentrate your attention on certain keywords so as not to make mistakes while marking your answers. Here is an example. Like attempting in this question, what you have to do is you have to read the statement. And carbon fibers are used in the manufacture of components used in automobiles and aircraft. So by reading the statement, I think that this is correct. I'll put a little tick mark in front of it. Now I'll read the second statement. Carbon fibers once used cannot be recycled. I put a cross because we cannot be always 100% sure that they cannot be recycled to any extent. So this is a wrong statement. Now I'll tell you the algorithm how you have to proceed while reading a question. Which of the statements given above is or are correct? You will either underline the word correct or put a circle around it to make a mental map indicating yourself that this is what the question is asking, that I have to mark the correct statement and not the incorrect, because in certain questions you have to mark the incorrect statement as your answer. Second would be we'll have to read all the options and not just directly jump onto the answer. Why? Because often you can commit mistakes in particularly in if you know the answer to a question, there is a high you are likely to commit a silly mistake, that marking a wrong option in the overexcitement or in the haste. So you will develop this algorithm that you will read all the answers all the options one by one and put a cross or tick mark in front of it, and then you will finally mark the answer. Like here you will read first option A, that only one is correct. Yes, I'll put a little tick mark in front of it. Then an option B, it's only second is correct, this is wrong. Similarly for option C and D, I'll put a little cross in front of them, and now finally I'll mark A as my option, and I'll put a double tick on the question as well, indicating that I know this answer with 100% surety, and I will be marking my A option as my final answer in my OMR sheet as well. So this is how you'll have to attempt a question. With practice, you'll be able to attempt this with speed. Let us see another example. Detection of a car crash or collision which results in the deployment of airbags almost instantaneously. Detection of accidental free fall of a laptop towards the ground which results in the immediate turning of the hardware. Detection of tilt of smartphone which results in the rotation of display between portrait and landscape mode. Now, by reading the statements, I am sure of statement A and B of being correct. However, I'm not sure of statement third being correct, so I'll put a little circle around it, making a mental note that I am confused in the statement third. Now, reading the question, how many of the above actions is the function of accelerometer? I'll underline the accelerometer required, highlighting that it is a keyword. Now I'll read the options given. Option A, only one is not correct as of now, whatever I have read the question. And option D is also not correct, so I'll put a cross mark in front of both these options. Now I'm left with option B and C. I'll put a little circle around option B and C, indicating that I am confused between these two options. I'll put a circle on the question as well, indicating that while I revisit this question, I have to reread it again, and I have to emphasize on the statement 3 because I'm confused in that only, and based on that I'll have to derive my answer from statement either B or C. Now we'll come on to the strategy of attempting the paper. Attempting your paper in one go is not a very optimum strategy. Instead, if you attempt your question paper in multiple readings, it will be very beneficial for you. You will not waste your time on certain questions of which you do not know the answer. So a best strategy would be to give your question paper in 3 iteration. In first iteration, you will devote 50 to 15 minutes, 50 to 55 minutes. You'll go through the entire paper, you'll read all the questions, you'll read a question, and based on your first instinct, whether you know the answer, you'll attempt the question, or you don't know, you will skip that question and move on to the another question. You will not stick on a question trying to solve it in your first iteration, because that will lead to wastage of time, and we have to save maximum time. So it will be like reading, you know the answer, tick mark, you don't know the answer, skip. So in that ways, when you don't waste the time, you'll save the time, you'll go on marking the questions which you know the answer of. You'll build your confidence also. Often on the first page, you might first two or three pages, UPSC put difficult questions to scare off the candidates, to build a mental pressure during the real time exam. So if you skip first few pages and jump onto the questions which you really know the answer of, that will build your confidence, which will help you in attempting the questions, and it will reduce your pressure. Now say question, which of the following activities of Reserve Bank of India is considered to be part of sterilization? This is a very simple, very direct question of the economy. We know its answer is A. However, in spite of that, we will not in haste mark only option A. We will read the option B and C, D as well. Oversight of the settlement and payment system, this is no. We'll put a cross mark beside it. Then coming on to the option C, debt and cash management of the central and state governments, this option is also wrong, so we'll put a cross mark in front of it. Option D, regulating the functions of non-banking financial institutions, this statement is also wrong, so I'll finally mark option A as my answer, put a double tick indicating that I'm 100% sure of its answer, and I'll be finally marking option A as my answer to question number 24 in my OMR sheet. Similarly, another question is there. which of how many of the above are included in capital market. I'll underline capital markets because to make a mental map that the question is asking about capital markets. Then in my mind I'll run what is capital markets. Capital markets are usually which deal with long-term lending and borrowing. So I'll start reading the statements given. Based on that, option 1 and 4, statement 1 and 4 are correct. I'll put tick mark in front of them, cross out statement 2 and 3. Now I'll start reading the options one by one and start marking them right or in cross out which are wrong. Then I finally mark my answer B, put a double tick in front of the question indicating that this question is good to go and to be filled in the OMR sheet. Now comes the second reading of the paper. In this you will devote another 20 minutes to it. In this you have to attempt the questions in which you had faced difficulty in recalling the answer in your first reading, or say you were confused between two options, or you had difficulty in eliminating two options, or there was certain question you had to do a little bit of thinking. So you in second iteration you will be attempting those questions. Now in this you have to reread the questions again and again carefully and mark or underline the keywords. Do your rough work so that you don't commit any silly mistake of misreading or misinterpreting the question. And then either you mark the question with double ticks saying that you are 100% sure of this question, or you will put a T indicating that this is a tukka you are, or answer is your guesswork and you're not 100% of this question. You'll still be marking the option as in your OMR. Let us see an example of such type of question. Herein we have also discussed this question previously, and by reading the statement 1, 2 and 3 I had come to the conclusion in my first iteration that option 1 and 2 are correct, but I was confused in in statement 3, so I had circled it. Now I'll reread the question again, and after rereading I am inclined that my gut says that statement 3 is also correct. So I'll now reread the options B and C based on that, since I am going with all the 3 statements being correct. So option C would be my answer. I'll put a cross in front of option B and I'll tick mark option C, and I'll again put a tick mark beneath the question number indicating that now I'll be marking this question. Now in this case I'm 100% sure after rereading, so I'll put a double tick mark and not a T indicating that I'm 100% sure of this answer and move forward. Or you can say if you're not 100% sure of the statement 3, you'll put a T and a double tick indicating though this is a guesswork question, but you'll still be marking in your OMR sheet. Similarly, here is another option which goes as, with reference to ancient South India, Kokarai, Pompuha, Muchiri, which were well known as. Now based on the options, I am inclined to go with option A and B, because first the question is talking about ancient South India. So mostly in our ancient history we read South India mostly about its trade and its capital cities. We hardly read about the centers of iron and steel making and shrines of Jain Tirthankaras, because these are mostly concentrated in northern, western, in central India. So I'll cross out option C and D. Now I'll concentrate on option B, A and B. Now based on my reading and my limited knowledge of the ancient India, I know most of the capital cities of the ancient South Indian empires. However, I might not be knowing all the port cities of the ancient South India. and ancient South India is more relatively known about its trade with the Southeast Asia, China, or the Roman Empire. So I am more inclined to go with option B. So I'll cross out option A and I'll be going with option B as my answer. Now I'll put a double tick mark under the question number. Now coming on to the third iteration. In this question, you'll again devote another 15 to 20 minutes in reading your questions. In this, you will be attempting questions which either you are able to eliminate only one option, or you will be attempting the question purely based on your logical reasoning, like deriving word meanings of the keywords from the question and the given options. Like here is an example of such question. Like here we have to tell which of the following organisms does waggle dance for others of their kin to indicate the direction and the distance to a source of their food. Now I'll cross out option B and D because hardly we read about these species in our environmental syllabus, be it static or current affairs, except when these species are in news. Now coming on to option A and C. Now based on my knowledge of environmental, both static and environment, often butterflies are read in context of whenever a new species of butterflies is discovered, or certain species is a state butterfly of a certain state. However, in context of honeybees, we often read that they have social organization, they collect food together, they have a social hierarchy. So based on and this of my knowledge also somewhat matches with the keywords in the question, such as kin, indicating they also have certain social organization. So based on this limited knowledge, I am inclined towards honeybees being as an answer. Now the symbols used will help in two things, like easy identification of the questions when you multiple readings, especially in the second or third iteration. It will help you skip the questions which you have already marked and directly jump onto the questions which you have to read in the second or third iteration. Second, it would help you in easy calculation. How much, say you have done 40 questions, you're 100% sure, so next 20 questions are your guesswork. So how much more risk you need to take and how much you can take. So this calculation will become much easier while counting your questions in different categories that you have attempted.